What up, friends? No one's saving me, and today we're going to be reviewing the newest album by Green Day, Saviors. This is the newest album by pop punk and pop rock veterans, Green Day. You know, Green Day have had a varied career over their 40 years of being a band. Throughout the years, Green Day have stuck to a relatively consistent sound while experimenting a bit during their middle, kind of 2000s era records. Now, there is a bit of a bias in me when it comes to Green Day. They were one of the first bands I truly got into, and they'll always hold a special place in my heart because of it. However, their later records haven't really been hitting in the same way that the band used to. I've definitely been coming to realize that I liked the more experimental side of Green Day that was present in the late 90s and early 2000s records. That Nimrod to American Idiot sequence was peak for me, and hell, even 21st Century Breakdown I thought was pretty great. Their 2010s output has just been kind of feeling like Green Day by the numbers to me, especially albums like Revolution Radio. I was in the extreme minority, however, in that I actually kind of liked their previous album, Father of All. It had this unserious, almost shitposty-esque demeanor that I kind of felt endeared to. It wasn't a great album by any means, however, it did show glimpses of that sort of carefree and weird aesthetic that Green Day had in those late 90s and early 2000s record that I really enjoyed. Saviors, unfortunately, kind of tread back into that routine that Green Day kind of lost me a bit with. It's not a bad album per se, but on the whole, it's just uninteresting. The start of the album with The American Dream Is Killing Me is honestly not that bad. It definitely feels like the American Idiot of the record, being very catchy while also being very upbeat, that punchy little hook to get you invested. It has a fun groove to it, the song's flow is overall pretty smooth, and I'm also digging those little string sections that they added here and there too. It is very Green Day overall, but I do appreciate it for what it is. Lyrically, I also think it's a bit more solid compared to a lot of the other songs on this project, as it largely tackles specific issues facing America like gentrification and homelessness. While not bad, I'm a bit less keen on Look Ma No Brains. It still has the energetic vibe of the previous song, however the riffs are a bit more rudimentary, I guess, and it doesn't really have the sort of catchiness and slightly interesting instrumental that the previous one did. Lyrically, it's also kind of a nothing track, as it largely doesn't really jump off the sort of American dream talking points and, lyrical angles that the previous song was going for. It's decently fun, it just kind of comes and goes. Bobby Socks, however, is one of my favorite songs on the project, and there's the unserious fun that this song is. The instrumental also stands out on this one, especially with how bouncy and groovy it gets at times. Billy's vocals on this one also go into more intense territory at times, if you can call it that, which is pretty different for the band overall. The lyrics are also pretty funny in how silly and cheesy they are, and I'm also really digging the vocal harmonies on this track. The bass solo is also really cool and catchy, and this song overall just feels like it has much more of its own personality compared to everything else on here. One-Eyed Bastard is another one of my favorites, going in a more garage rock direction that was prevalent on their last record, Foxborough Hot Tubs, and Dose. The piano adds some nice texture to the track, and the lyrics are just so unserious that I kinda can't help but love them. They're pretty funny, you can tell that they were just having fun on this one. I'm also really digging that because of this, it kinda has this confident fuck you attitude to it, which I also appreciate. And while a bit vague, I can at least kinda see this one being a bit more relevant to the American dream framing of the record. In a way, they're basically just so over it at this point, and also just so fed up with the powers that be. It may not be a battle cry per se, but at least it kinda represents how people are just kinda fed up with the status quo of American life and how they can't live comfortably anymore. The next track, Dilemma, is a fairly nice one, even if it is kinda par for the course for Green Day. The main melody is pretty nice, however it does feel a bit repetitive at times. It also kinda has elements of other songs combined together, which makes it also not have much of its own identity. Still, the riffs are nice enough overall, and I really do like the progression on the bridge especially. I just wish I had a few more elements to help it stand out compared to some of the other songs on the record, like the strings on American Dream Is Killing Me or the piano on One-Eyed Bastard. Goodnight Adeline is one of the slower moments on the record, and it doesn't really hit that much. I kind of feel the same way about it as I do about Dilemma, in that it's not bad, but it's missing that one defining element that would make it stand out even more. I will say that I do really like Billy's vocals on this track though. Corvette Summer is another notable track and also one of my favorites. Like One-Eyed Bastard, it has that very unserious undertone to it that was prevalent on the previous album that I actually appreciated. The cowbell adds a pretty fun and silly tone to the track, and Billy's vocals on this one are actually really smooth too. The chorus is catchy as hell, and I think this song has the most Foxborough hot tub energy out of any song on here. It largely lyrically follows up on One-Eyed Bastard, basically saying that the best way to win the game is to not play it. It's honestly an attitude that I've seen in a lot of people these days, understandably. The instrumental and lyrics on this one I think blend together especially well. Suzie Chapstick might be my favorite song on the project overall. It's a definite standout both lyrically and instrumentally, feeling the most pining out of all of them. The instrumental is just so moody, and combined with the lyrics and the delivery of them, it creates a really bittersweet vibe. I also think that lyrically this is where Billy excels, not necessarily making a grand political statement, but more so describing how people respond to our modern world and the politics within. Billy's lyrics are often not descriptive enough to make some grand political statement, but lyrics like these kind of describing the decay of human connection, the lack of third spaces, and how we're just not really able to relate to each other as much these days, that's one of Billy's stronger suits. They're well done, and they also don't even really tread much into the boomer sort of technology bad that often is the case, so kudos to you there, Billy. Living in the 20s is also one of the most notable songs on the project, I think. This is mostly because it's directly describing problems that are being faced in America, like on the first song on the project, in that this one is directly talking about mass shootings, the lack of insight and regulation on AI, and among other things, alongside political unrest in the face of injustice. Instrumentally, it's nothing too different for the band, however, I do really like that guitar solo on here, kind of expressing the manic delivery and manic thoughts about the things that they're talking about in the song. That and the riffs are pretty catchy and fun too. Now we get to Father to a Son, and while I do appreciate the angle that this track is going for, it also doesn't really do much for me. It's another slower track, and I do appreciate the sentiment of this sort of message either from Billy's father to himself or Billy to his kids. It's unfortunately kind of boring to listen to. The strings are nice, I suppose, but it honestly kind of reads like the more underwhelming ballads from the Trilogy era, so it just doesn't really make me feel much of anything. Now, if you have listened to this record, you probably noticed that I didn't really talk about as much of the second half songs as I did the first. This is unfortunately because I think the album kind of loses steam as we get to the second half. Again, the songs largely aren't that bad, but they tend to get less interesting as they go on, I find. My biggest problem overall is that I just find the album largely unmemorable. Lyrically, it's more often than not kind of overly vague, and instrumentally, it's just kind of Green Day as usual. And even that, it's Green Day as usual, but in a less interesting way than usual somehow. You know, maybe it's nostalgia or something, but I really do miss the instrumental variety that was prevalent on albums like Nimrod, Warning, and American Idiot. And hell, as bloated as 21st Century Breakdown was, at least I can actually remember all of the songs on that one. I think, at the end of the day, you know, it's no secret that I tend to prioritize production and instrumentals, and this album largely doesn't really offer that much on that front for me. However, I don't even really have the lyrics to fall back on because lyrically, it's probably not really their best either. I don't really hate any tracks on here, and honestly, it's a fairly pleasant listen while the album's on. I just don't really remember much of it when the album ends. Because of all that, I am feeling a decent 5 on this newest album by Green Day. Of course, we do still have to talk about album covers on this show, and this one's okay. You know, it's kind of the tried and true sort of punk and rock aesthetic for an album cover. Kind of that one bold image. It has the, I guess, vibrant colored text, if you want to call it that, on there. There's not much design going on to it because, you know, a lot of these album covers are typically designed to be more direct and to the point and not really artsy, I suppose. But, you know, it works for what it is. It gets the job done, and I guess that kind of describes the album itself, too. But of course, those are just my thoughts on this newest album by Green Day. What did you guys think? Do you think this was kind of a return to form for them? Maybe their best album in a little while? Or is this also kind of underwhelming or just kind of middle of the road for you, too? Let me know. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell, and maybe I'll save you. And until the next one, farewell.